Will the Pokemon market crash in 2026? Are the signs already staring us straight in the face? Will there be a Pokemon winter or a continued strong resurgence in Pokemon value and demand? These are the signals that you should be looking out for right now. PSA graded 11.5 million cards last year. That's an 85% year-over-year increase. They were processing over 2 million cards per month. And by May of 2026, they had to partially halt new submissions because it was breaking their operation. That's the market that everyone keeps saying is about to crash. If that is not enough, then check out this. Whatnot crossed 6 billion in sales in 2025, and Pokemon is generating between 80 to 120 million dollars in gross merchandise volume on Whatnot. That is just insane. And they are doing that on that platform every single month. Now, this is a situation with online marketplaces and grading companies. But what happens when you actually walk into physical stores? Empty shelves at the most popular retailers like Walmart and Target, resellers buying up all the inventory and reselling it back to you on eBay for 3 or 5 times the value. That's the pattern with every major release right now. Not just the premium stuff, but everything else. When retailers can't keep $50 product on the shelf, that's a demand signal that doesn't require a lot of interpretation. Now, if you thought the situation on Whatnot was bad, have you checked out the shenanigans going on TikTok live shopping for Pokemon? Well, check this out. There is an entire economy on TikTok live right now where people pay real money on stream in real time to have their Pokemon carts open for them. Some of these streams run 24 hours a day. People are tipping, buying spots on breaks, watching their pulls happen live. 3 years ago, this didn't exist. Now it's a meaningful pipeline of demand, especially for newer collectors and younger buyers. That's a new on-ramp to this hobby, and it's still growing. So why is everyone predicting that a Pokemon crash is coming? Crash predictions are not coming from nowhere. There are real reasons why people believe this. The core issue is that Pokemon is not a trackable market. And I mean that in the most traditional sense of the word. Pokemon doesn't behave like stocks. There are no Pokemon indexes that track and follow the value of cards, whether they are raw, sealed, or even graded. Anyone on any given day can pull up and say the market is X today. What we actually have are thousands of individual micro markets. So when someone says that the Pokemon market is crashing, the first question I always ask is what card, which set, or which grade is that impacting right now? Here are the 3 scenarios that I think genuinely can break this market. I am not predicting any of it. I just want to share with you what to watch out for. Catalyst number 1. The Pokemon company deliberately floods supply. This is the one that I'm most watching very closely because in my opinion, it's already in motion. The Pokemon company has been explicit about making their product more accessible and help fight off the scalpers. What that means in practice is higher print runs, more products at retail, and if they succeed, the secondary market for sealed product is going to come down because the scarcity premium disappears overnight. This is assuming, of course, that the Pokemon company is going to print the most popular and sought after sets that have already been released. We will simply have to wait and see. But of course, there are no guarantees. Unlike the other 2 scenarios I will mention in this video, this is not a black swan event. It's a corporate decision that is entirely in the Pokemon company's hands. They can turn the printing dial whenever they want. Something to be cautious about because there is past history of the Pokemon Company overprinting sets to death. Let's not forget the Sword and Shield era, which is a prime example of that actually happening. I would encourage everyone to watch what the Pokemon Company is planning on doing with distribution around the 30th anniversary set. Catalyst number 2, recession and consumer spending drying up. Pokemon cards are a luxury. I love them. But when people are worried about losing their job, their $50 ETB must go. Facts are there's real economic uncertainty happening right now. Ongoing layoffs across many sectors in the job market and increasing consumer debt are just of the many factors impacting many Americans right now. If unemployment moves significantly higher, people will start to make choices that will ultimately impact the hobby. The part that concerns me the most than the average collector tightening up their belts so they're not spending as much in the hobby are the bigger investors that came into this hobby back in 2020. And the reason why is because that money isn't loyal. If broader markets start to drop, those very people will use us as their liquidity exit from the hobby. They will sell Pokemon to cover their losses. It happened back in 2022 and it can most definitely happen again. The correlation between card prices and the broader market sentiment is bigger now than it was 5 years ago because there is more big money now in the hobby than ever before. I'm not calling a recession. I'm just a guy talking on YouTube, giving my personal take on the situation. But if one hits, the hobby is definitely not immune. Catalyst 3. A trust-destroying scandal at scale. The PSA temper slap scandal was a warning shot. The market survived it, but I often think about a version of that story that the market doesn't survive. 3 things. 1. Massive counterfeiting. The technology to produce convincing fakes is improving every single day. If collectors can't genuinely trust a gray without a lab confirmation, confidence breaks in a way that is very hard to rebuild. 2. A major platform failure. If eBay has some sort of sustained fraud crisis in Pokemon categories, or if Whatnot has a significant collapse event, the liquidity infrastructure takes the real damage. Or another grading scandal, but this time is so much bigger. Not isolated events, a structural problem that comes out publicly. If that happens, the premium that PSA commands over raw cards simply collapses, and a lot of the value is priced around that premium. None of these are inevitable, but none of them are also not impossible, which launches in September. The release will tell us a lot about which direction the Pokemon Company is planning on taking. Here is where I land. All the signals say this market is not crashing in 2026. The PSA numbers, the Whatnot numbers, and the sellouts happening at retail. The data is simply not telling a collapse story. And the 30th anniversary set coming out in September is a structural event. First ever global same day launch. New rarity types going to be introduced. That's a catalyst and not a ceiling. But the supply saturation is a real risk. That's the one really worth watching out for. Not because the Pokemon Company is going to blow up its own hobby, they definitely won't do that, but because the line between accessible and overprinted is very thin. Pay close attention to what they do about distribution over the next 12 months. Don't panic, but don't sleepwalk either. I gave you 3 scenarios that could actually break this market. Which one do you think is more likely to happen? Tell me below because I'll be reading every single comment.